keep up to date with our latest videos, please hit the subscribe button below. Hi there, welcome to this video from footballbetdata.com. It's Chris here. We're at the conclusion of the EFL season in England, and time to do a little bit more analysis with some of our data, just to show you some of the things that you can do, or some of the ways you can manipulate. So this could be used as an Excel tuition, if nothing else. But one of the things you will discover in this video is just how certain teams are over and under represented by not the bookmaker, but by Betfair themselves. So we did a video, and I'm going to link this video in our description below. We did do a video about 3 months ago that you can find on the channel, which was English football betting, which teams are the most profitable. And at the time we highlighted a certain team or a certain selection of teams, and gave you that advice 3 or 4 months ago, saying that, you know, bookmakers and betting exchanges were underrepresenting some teams at that stage, and that trend seemed to continue throughout the rest of the season. So we're going to get into that level of analysis now, but like I said, that video is will be interesting for some of you to watch retrospectively, given that was published at the end of January, I think it was. So like I said, I'll put a link to that in our channel description below. So in terms of getting the data, I'm going to navigate to our fixtures and results page, and going to look at the English League One, which is just concluded for the 22-23 season, and I'm going to export that data to Excel. Very quick, as you can see there. I'm going to open that up, and that beautifully comes in a table format with all the games in there. So I can do a quick ready reckoner to see there's a count of 553, and there's 552 games in a regular season for leagues that play each other twice with a 24 team capacity. So what we're going to do is, to enable us to do this analysis, is add a couple of additional columns down the end here. So I'm going to call this one home percentage, draw percentage, and away percentage. What we're going to do is look at the Betfair odds, because the Betfair betting exchange is as close to true value as you will find, because they make their money from the commission, and the prices are set by bettors and traders. It generally regresses to around about the true value. And what we can do here is find where punters are underrepresenting or overrepresenting a team, and thus driving that price too low or pushing it too high to give you as a backer certain value potentially, and what teams represent that value. So how we're going to do this, we're going to work out the percentage chance of each outcome for each game very quickly. So we just do a simple equals 1 divided by, and we're going to go in for the Betfair home odds here. You can see there it's put a calculation all the way down, so we only have to do it for this top row because we're in the table format. Then we're going to do it for the draw. Now make sure you're selecting the Betfair odds, not the bookmaker average odds. And the same for the away win. Scroll over and pop in the away win in here. And you can see there very quickly we've got a percentage outcome, and if you sum that, it comes to 1.6. So let me just convert this into percentages. Actually, I've done that wrong, haven't I? Let me 1 divided by Betfair away odds. So that's, I should have spotted that. So your sum should come to just over 100% on all of these lines, but we're going to do some rounding to make sure that the outcomes are spot on 100%. So we're going to do a total in here, and we're going to sum these 3 newly created columns and then convert these to a percentage. So you can see in there that most of those are just over 100%. You're very unlikely to find anything below, although saying that there are a few in there below, which meant you could have laid each outcome at a profit if you could have got on at those prices at the same time. But generally speaking, prices are just over 100% for each game. So now what we're going to do is round these up. Home round, draw round, and away round. And what we're going to do is say the home win percentage and then divide it by the total. Now we're going to do the same for the draw, but we're also going to add the home win percentage to that, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. And we're going to do the away win divided by the total plus the cumulative, and that should give us a 100% round up for each outcome. So what we're saying is basically there's a 33.44% chance of a home win, there's a 61.31% chance of a home win or a draw, and then this column there's a 100% chance of an outcome. Obviously, given the fact that the game will complete, there's a 100% chance of an outcome. Okay. Now what we can do is put a randomizer in here to randomize the outcome based on the betting exchange price, which, like I said, is deemed to be close to true value. So we're going to use a function in Excel called randbetween. You can start typing and that will come up. And we're going to say the bottom is 100 and then the top is, sorry, bottom is 0 and top is 100. And we're going to then divide it by 100 to give us a random outcome. Now you can refresh on your Excel sheet to bring up a new randomized calculation. So you can just drag and click and you can see that those random figures will change, or you can press F9 to do a calculate, and that will bring up a new set of random numbers for each line every time you do that. Okay. And then what we're going to do is use that randomized figure to generate the outcome. So we're going to say outcome in here. And now what we're going to say is if, let's put the if function in, if that cell there is less than or equal to this, then it's a home win. If it is, if this is less than or equal to this one, then it's a draw, and anything else is an away win, and then put the brackets. So you can see here that we have now outcomes. So 44%, or 44 is the number, which means it falls between, it's not up to the home rounding figure of 33.44%, so it falls in between there. So we automatically randomize that outcome using the odds to generate percentages, to generate a randomized outcome based on those percentages, and it'll give you a figure in there which we can use as our predictor. And again, like I said, by going down, however you want to do it, using F9 or a refresh, you can change the outcome, but it'll always be based around these hard-coded percentages, which are, like I said, the conversion of the odds. Okay. So if what I'm saying is you do that 100 times, you should have 33 home wins there or thereabouts. If you do that enough times, then the probability and the averages will drive towards these figures that we have in here as the bookmaker outcomes. Okay. Now what we're going to do is move to a second sheet where we can start some further in-depth analysis. We're going to use the pivot table that we've used many times in our videos before. But for anybody who hasn't seen those, let's select our full data set. And it may be that you have to watch this video a couple of times if pivot tables and some of these formulas aren't familiar to you, but we're not going to use anything that's too complex. So it should be relatively easy for you to pick up, and nothing that's going to be in any version of Excel that you shouldn't have. You know, if you've got a version of Excel 2010, 2013 or latter, you should have all of these functions and more. So there shouldn't be anything prohibiting you from accessing these. So now what we're going to do is put in, create a table for the home home games, home teams, and we're going to put in there the outcomes, and we're going to put that in the column, and then we can use one of these, any one of these other fields to select the count. And what that does is bring through each team, and we're just going to organize these and how many home wins they would have had, how many draws, and how many away wins they had. This is using our predictions, not actual, so this is the predicted. Okay, now we can take out the blanks from here if we don't need the blanks that it pick up within that, so we can filter those out. You can see there we have every team played 23 games at home, and these are the randomized outcomes based on the percentage chances from the odds of teams winning, drawing and losing their home games. Now we can do the same for away. So an easy way to do this is to select the current pivot table, and we can put in here the pivot table, and we're just going to change to away. And now what we want to do is say, well, this, if the team is away and the result was away, that was an away win. A draw and a home win would be a loss for Accrington in that top example there. Okay, so we now have a data set put together which has the home wins and the away wins in there. Let's just move this over a little bit so we have a bit more room. And now what we can do is use some text, and we're just going to copy the list of teams that we have in here and paste them in. And I can create a little merge cell here and call this home, and we're just going to count up the number of home wins, number of away wins, draws and losses. So we can put in here 1 draw lost and 1 drawn lost. So just going to put a little border around this so you can see it more clearly. Don't want to move those. So we're aligning. Let's actually just do it like this. Let's put some small lines in here and then a thicker line around it, just so it's clear what I've done there. And we can separate those out. Now what I'm going to do at the top here, because I'm going to use these in part of the formulas, is just going to put HD and A. Because we're referencing HD and A, we haven't used WD and L. So I'm just going to put HD and A and away, or A, D and L. Okay, and you'll see why in a second when I come to use the calculations. So what we're going to do in here is just put a number, and that's going to be the count of home wins that we predicted for Accrington. So we can use the equals, and we can go straight to the pivot table, and that picks up, because we clicked in that cell, the data in that pivot table. Now that's hard coded, but we can change that by deleting out the Accrington in there and putting in a cell reference, and we can put a $sign at the front so we can drag that across. And this is where we're going to use the helper row at the top. So instead of having the hard coded H, we can put in the cell reference, and we can lock the row, so we can drag that across and down, and we can complete that for every team in that league. And then we can do the same for the away. So remember, we're on a separate pivot table here, so we can select the away pivot table. You can combine these, but you know, like I said, I'm trying to keep this fairly basic so it's easy to follow for anybody else who wants to do the same or similar for the past season or the seasons going forwards. Okay, so we have 1 drawn or loss for the away. What's happened there? I put in an L. My mistake. There you go. So you can see straight away if you make an error. Somebody's probably shouting at this video before I did that, knowing that that was going to happen. But we've created there the basis of a league table. Okay. Now we obviously aren't predicting the scores. I'm just doing this very top level based on the result prediction. So we can therefore generate the points tally predicted for each team. And we can do this using calculation. So obviously being a draw is a point, so we can count how many draws Accrington were predicted to have. Then we can say how many home wins, and we're going to times that by 3 because it's 3 points for a win. and away wins again times 3. And what that will do is calculate a points tally based on the predictions for each team using the odds percentage chances. Okay. Now what I can do is bring in the actual points. Now you can use obviously any mobile app, newspaper, websites, whatever you want to as your source to put in the actual points. So I'm just going to scroll through and very quickly put these in. 62, 54, 76, 58, 27, 98, 62, 45, 44, 47, 77, 101, 49, 70, 96, 59, 69. Okay, so we have the actual points for each team very quickly entered in there. And now what we're going to put in is the actual position. So where that team finished in the league, if I could spell it correctly. There we go, actual position. And again, using the same data source, you can populate this. So 23, 4, 5, 17, 15, 20, 10, 16, 7, 14, 13, 24, 2, 11, 21, 22, 19, 6, 1, 18, 8, 3, 12, and 9th. Okay. So there we go. We've got the actual points and the actual position. Now what we're going to do is build our own league table. Okay. And I'm going to just pop it over here. Actual position. And what I'm going to actually do is put in a look up position. Just going to reserve out that column. And this one, I'm just going to put a dot in here for now. And then again, you'll see why in a second. I'm going to have position. And I'm going to enter a pivot table in here. Enter a pivot table. Now we want to be selecting this full data set here. So in my example, this is from N to Z. Select the full data range. And what we're going to have in the data range is the team in here. And then we're going to have the points. That team accrued in here, sum of points. Then we can have the actual points next to it. And then we're going to have position, which we don't yet know. We haven't calculated that. And then we're going to have the actual position. And actually what we're going to do is put the lookup position. Like I said, we haven't calculated that in there. So if you're following, this is what you should have. So we've got the points tally. I'm just going to change this. So points pred. And then we can have points act. And then we're going to have position pred and position actual. Okay. Let's move that out of the way for a second. So we're starting to get a league table put together. Now what we're going to do is just put in the positions here. Now obviously this is just alphabetically at the minute, so as the table would look at the beginning of the season, and we can colour this if you so desire. You can put some colours in just to highlight where the playoff places and promotion places are. There's 4 teams that go down from this league, and just going to colour that white, so that's not where you want to be. Now I'm just going to make that bold and put it centralized. Now what we can do with a pivot table is go a step further and calculate some detail that we don't already have as an option. And we can go here to analyze pivot table, field items and sets, and then calculate field. Okay. Now the first thing we want to calculate is the points diff. And I'm just going to call it points D for the minute. Now in here, this gives us the options of the fields that we can use to calculate the points difference. Okay, so what we want to use is points in here minus actual points. Okay, actually do it the other way around, because that will give us a negative. So we want to use actual points minus points. Okay, and that gives us the sum of points difference. Drag that over here. I'm just going to rename that points diff. Okay, I'm going to change the format of those cells there to a number one that is negative. So you can see quite quickly there where we have teams that have obtained more points than they were predicted to obtain throughout the season. Okay, now what we can do is put in the position, and we can calculate that as well. So the lookup position, we just want to make sure, because obviously we've put this in alphabetically, we want to make sure that we are referencing the same position for that team. Okay, so what we're going to say is sum if. So we want to say the range is here, although this alphabetically in a minute, we're going to put a sort on it, and the criteria is here, and then the sum range is the position here, and I can drag that all the way down. So that should match at the moment. I'm just going to take the 0 out at the end. But if we sort this by predicted points, or sort options descending by predicted points, this gives us our predicted league table position. Okay, so you can see here Ipswich at the top with 107 predicted points actually achieved 98, and then we have Sheffield Wednesday, Peterborough, Plymouth all the way through. So you can see here that the teams that straight away, teams that have performed better than expected, Plymouth, Bolton, Barnsley, Portsmouth, all the way down in terms of points, that is. Okay, now this is a one-off, so we're going to do a few refreshes and a few goes at this before we look at any further analysis, if you like. But let's also go to the position now. We can do that, so we can populate the lookup position, which we've done. So if we do a refresh on this table, we just need to look at this lookup position. Should be, I think it's calculated it as a count rather than a sum. There we go. And we can change this one to position pred. So you can see here that the predicted position for that team, Ipswich, was first, and obviously aligning to here. And now what that will allow us to do is calculate the position difference. So again, if we go to pivot table analysis or analyze and then calculate field, we can put in here pos diff, and what we want to do is calculate the lookup position and then minus actual position. And we can call this one position diff. Okay, and we can then do the same with this. We can make it a number, take away the decimals and make it a minus. I'm just going to highlight this one in bold, and we're going to highlight this one in bold as well. And what I said earlier about being able to do a refresh, we can put a button in, so you don't have to keep doing this. So we do this by creating a macro. So if I'm going to say record macro, here's my macro, and if I say I want to refresh, so this is the best way to do it. So I'm going to select this pivot table, and we're going to do refresh all, and then we need to do a double refresh because we're pulling through the data. So the first refresh is refreshing all the data. Second one is refreshing those pivot tables to the left, and then the third one is finally updating this pivot table. Now what we can do is hit the stop button, so you can go to developer and hit stop, or we've got it down the bottom here either way. And that has generated our macro that we can go into. You can see here, we don't need to select the cell, so we can delete that out. But what we've done is create a very basic macro, which is refresh all, and then we refresh the pivot table twice to pull through the updated information into these pivot tables, and then we update the final pivot table, which pulls the lookup positions. So we can run that by selecting macro run, and that will update, as you can see there. Or we can add in a button by clicking on the insert, and we can add the macro to it, and you can rename the macro if you want, and hitting that button, you can see there that we get that update every time we click it. Okay, so you get the updated table, and obviously the more times we rerun that simulation, the more accurate the predictions will become, because we're taking out that variance. Now obviously on this one off here, it's predicted that Ipswich would have a points haul of 110 points, which was they actually achieved 12 less. Predicted position was first, and they actually ended up at second. Now you can easily see along here where the outliers are. So Sheffield Wednesday 25, Barnsley 16, Plymouth 42 points, and a whopping 12 places above where this run of simulations expected them to be based on those predictions and those odds. Now remember, obviously using the odds and the probabilities, there's always going to be a chance that an away win can happen. Now if we scroll up to the bottom here, because we started to see some very low odds on the likes of Ipswich when they played at home. So their last home game here, their Betfair home odds 1.17, so that represented an 85.4% chance of a home win. But obviously running that simulation, in this instance it did occur to be a home win, but if we run it 100 times, there's going to be 14 occurrences where the result was not a home win. So 4% of the time roughly there would be an away win in there. So that will reflect in here, and obviously that's just one game as an example. But like I said, the more times you run this, the more accurate it will be. You can see Plymouth are sixth in this simulation, but again 26 points lower than the expected. Now I'm just going to run this again and keep an eye on Plymouth. So they're 30 below there, 21 below there. So even here they're predicted to be third. They actually won the league with 101 points. And we've got Ipswich and Sheffield Wednesday in the top two. So they've got the top three correct here. And you've got Peterborough and Bolton, who also finished in the playoffs. Barnsley, who did finish seventh. So this is quite an accurate one here. But again, we've got Barnsley and the status of Barnsley and Plymouth this season. If you look at these two, Plymouth again on 34, Barnsley all the way down here, 33 points below their actual achieved target, 13 below for Plymouth there. Barnsley 6 points below, but up into fourth there. But you can continually see that Ipswich and Sheffield Wednesday are predicted to be in and around those top two, where Plymouth and Barnsley, who finished in the top five, are quite commonly below those automatic and playoff positions. Again, Plymouth down here in 17th here, Barnsley in 10th. You've got Sheffield Wednesday, Ipswich up there. Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday again. Barnsley 13 points, Plymouth 37 points below. So you can see here that what this is saying is that the odds that the betting exchange are setting are giving value on Barnsley and Plymouth, massively on Plymouth. You can see here the position difference to where they actually finished. Just going to keep running this because, again, Plymouth 9 points below, 38 points. It's huge. It's really significant. Barnsley 23. These are certainly the two that we're looking at that are continually who have continually achieved more points than they were expected to, given their individual match odds and that were assigned. This is by the betting exchange, remember, not by bookmakers. But Plymouth and Barnsley here, each time. Actually, Barnsley, there's a rare occurrence where they would have ended up second in that simulated season. But again, down here, nine points below Plymouth at 32 again. So we can run this and we can actually start recording these results, and you can get Excel to do this. But just by running this time and time again, you can see here that Plymouth and Barnsley are the two that really stand out as being consistently, when simulating, they're consistently achieved more points than was expected given those odds predictions, and therefore the likelihood of a win or points haul occurring in that season. Now you can obviously look at the difference as well and look for teams that massively underperformed. So in this instance here, Forest Green, they were expected to achieve 59, they only achieved 27, and they obviously finished bottom of that league. But you can start looking for outliers. Oxford, 25. So in this instance, Forest Green next to bottom, but again, the anticipated points haul was more than they actually achieved, and that will probably be reflected of their odds at the beginning part of the season, because they've had a really poor run towards the end of the season, and those odds would have started creeping up. And as they didn't win many, I know they beat Sheffield Wednesday in a freak result. You wouldn't really expect to be seeing any value from the games in the last sort of latter third to quarter of the season. But Oxford looks to be one that you can say, well, they were massively underpriced. They failed to achieve what their expected level was. You can see them on there, and again you've got Plymouth and Barnsley. So this is a really interesting way of analysing how teams have performed against their expected level, given the probability that have derived from the fair odds from the Betfair Exchange market. So you can use this, create your own sheet, use it for other leagues, use it going forwards. It's just really interesting analysis and something to keep an eye on as to why do bookmakers or betting exchanges and general people, the perception of teams, why are there some anomalies in there? Now you could quite obviously say that perhaps Plymouth, maybe to a lesser extent Barnsley, I know they've had really good seasons, but you'd expect as the season went on those odds to start reflecting that, but it doesn't seem to be the case. And it could be because if you look at the sort of teams that are up here with the minuses, Ipswich, Derby, Portsmouth, they're all big teams in terms of a perception amongst the public. They've played in the Premiership in the recent seasons. They've potentially, in Portsmouth's case, they've won the FA Cup. These teams have played in Europe. They've been in, done well in major competitions. They've signed some big name players. Like I said, they're ex-Premiership teams. So perhaps that perception is still attached to these teams. You've got Charlton as well, obviously Sheffield Wednesday and Bolton as well. So there's some big names in this league, if not teams, and that's potentially still reflective in the way that people place their money and drive the market. So I hope you enjoyed the video. It's there to give you some additional Excel help, drive some understanding on formula, pivot tables, macros, but also to show you how you can really start getting in and deep diving into the data that we provide in a real quick output. You can then take it to the next level. So I do hope that this video has provided useful for you.